And Charlie joins us now from Liverpool. So, Charlie, as we saw in your piece, Operation Moonshot is already underway in Liverpool. Can you tell us how the government, the British government, with the help from the military, is testing the entire city?
Yeah, well, Vlad, potentially it's huge. The idea is that you take a city the size of Liverpool, 500,000 people, and you test every single resident that you can, young and old, whether they're suffering from COVID symptoms or not. And what you're able to do then is identify not only the percentages of COVID in the community, but you can isolate the people who had no idea that they were carrying this virus. You can make them self-isolate for 2 weeks. You can imagine what that's going to do. And Liverpool City Council said that they've identified something like 2,000 people since this program began. Many of those people had no idea that they were even carrying COVID, and they've been told to self-isolate. Now, there is a caveat here. Even on a population the size of 500,000, about 119,000, something like that, have come forward and been tested. We're outside a testing area now. It's trailed off considerably since then. What you really want to do is have as much of the population as possible. But even with just under a quarter of the population tested, imagine if you could self-isolate 2,000 people and the stopping that spread of the virus. If you could replicate that here in the UK, which is what they're going to do, they're going to start rolling that out to 67 different locations, as you saw that in my report. So it's going to have a massive impact on the spread of the virus.
You touched on this a little bit in your report. Can you tell us how the technology is different from what has been used to test for COVID-19 up until this point?
Well, you know, Anne-Marie, it goes down to that lateral flow testing. And without getting too complicated about it, it's similar to the at-home pregnancy test that you have in terms of it uses the same sort of platform. So you'll have those two lines. I got tested myself. And you get the test back on your text, on your phone, within 20 minutes. So people know immediately. More importantly, the government and the people that are running this know immediately. So the idea is it's kind of testing, it's a pilot system for two different formats. Not only trying to test as much of the population as you possibly can here in Liverpool, which has had one of the highest infection rates and continues to have one of the highest infection rates, and then you can spread it out nationwide, but you're also testing the kit itself. So you're going to have an opportunity possibly in the future, and this is what they're trying to see whether it works, whether you can have an at-home test. You wake up in the morning, you take this test. If you're negative, go about your business. If you've tested positive, self-isolate for 2 weeks. You can imagine this may be more important in the interim than even a vaccine, because you'll know definitively or close enough to definitively whether or not you're good to go that day, and it's going to have an impact. Now, there is another caveat there. There's a 95% chance, so it's 95% successful. That means it's 5% unsuccessful. That means that sometimes people are testing negative where they might be positive. And that could be dangerous because now you have people who think that they're negative and now they're out in the community. So that's a danger. But as one of the researchers said here, I take 95% every day of the week.
Right. So that concern that those tests may be ineffective, Charlie, people still feel pretty confident with the kind of numbers you're suggesting.
Well, yes. And again, Vlad, it comes down to scale, doesn't it? So if you start testing, they've had 120,000, 119,000 people who've been tested. The vast majority of those people, in fact, almost all of them, none of them had COVID symptoms. There's another test for people that feel like they're having COVID symptoms, and that's taking place, and they've seen an escalation in positive tests. Again, because the infection rate is so high here. So in parallel, they're running together. But if you can start to get those numbers and get that data, and as the British government is starting to do, they're going to start rolling this out to 67 different areas, including places like London, Manchester, parts of the north, parts of the country that have been hardest hit. Well, now you're gathering all of this data, and you're shrinking those margins. So with 1/5 of the population that's been tested here, they've been able to identify 2,000 people. If you could replicate that here throughout the UK and in the United States, imagine the impact it would have on the spread of the virus.
Yeah, Charlie, you know, it's an admirable effort, and I hope it is successful. Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much.
Thank you.